Amy, so a question, just give us, a bit of a flow about how that match was, how fantastic it was.
Yeah. I've done a couple of interviews and all I can say is just it's an indescribable feeling, to get my first start after however many days and under the great tutelage of Tom Sermanni for the first time. It was amazing. 1 goal I was pretty happy with, and then to get 2 was amazing, and that's more than I've ever scored for the national team, and in 1 game as well. So, and also to come back from such a long injury, I worked really hard to get to this point. And I think it showed on the field, the work that I've put in and the time. And I think it's all paid off.
You mentioned Tom there, and I think, it's nice to sort of give him a bit of a tribute because it is his last match. 3rd time in charge of the Matildas, though, so he's probably going to be back in another decade. What do you think he brings? Because each time he seems to be in charge, he's really good at just bringing people back, bringing new ones through. Tell me what it feels like inside the camp.
Yeah, I think Tom's greatest strength is he's such a great people person. He's a great people manager, and I think that's what a lot of teams are sometimes missing. So coming back into camp, it was like I'd never left, and even more so I felt more welcome than ever before because of Tom, so major props.
Was there a bit of a feeling that the team was playing for Tom a little bit tonight, and how much discussion was there about new incoming coach Joe?
Yeah, I would say so. Joe came in to visit us before we left for the stadium, and he even said, let's play for Tom. I know Tom doesn't like to have too much attention on him because and again, this is his strength, he really emphasizes that the game is for the players and less for the coaches. It was great to get such a big result for Tom and for ourselves as well.
There was a real Canberra theme too, with Michelle Hammond getting on the scoreboard. Was that something that was spoken about too? I know, Tom, you assured her a big role before the game.
Yeah, we knew she was going to come on, and it was great to see her come on and score. Doesn't get much better than that in front of our home crowd.
Amy, you talked last week about how you weren't expecting this call up, and how grateful you were for it, and you've come out and put out one of your best performances in the Matildas jersey. 8-hour days, in the physio room, trying to get back to this moment. What did it actually feel like, to score those 2 goals, given all of your setbacks?
Yeah, I think it's really just a culmination of all the work that I've put in. I don't really have a sob story to give because when I get on the field, football is just football. I've said, football is fun. It's what I love to do. So, my motivation throughout my whole rehab and the whole year that it took was just to be back on the field and playing the game that I love. And to get such a good result and to have such a good performance personally, I think is just a bonus. But to be able to run again and kick a ball again is something that, people take for granted. I think there was a point in my rehab where I didn't even think I'd be able to walk properly again. So, yeah, the biggest thing is just for me to be on the field, and anything extra is just a bonus.
You're also one of the only players wearing gloves tonight, and you play football in Sweden where it is notoriously cold. What was with that?
Yeah, well, 9 degrees is tropical for me at this point, but I don't like to have cold hands. I didn't want to wear an undershirt because I would get too hot, so it was like a nice little in-between for me.
Fashion statement.
Amy, I guess wind back the clock almost 10 years or so when you were in Canberra for a season. Could you have ever imagined you'd be back here in front of a sold-out crowd, playing in front of, I guess, where women's games come from, really?
No, I never would have imagined it. The game has grown so much since I was 16. Playing for Canberra United was my very first season in the A-Leagues. I don't think I ever got to step foot on this field, actually. Our stomping grounds were McKellar Park. But we were in and around the AIS a lot. To come and to play in front of a huge crowd and a sold-out crowd, and also I've heard it's a record at this stadium, it was amazing, and I think it just goes to show how big the Matildas have become and how big women's football has become, and it's really nice to just reap the benefits of that and perform in front of such amazing fans.
So I've got a question for Tom. You were talking so much about...
Sorry, can we just keep it with Amy, just because I want to get her into recovery. Any final questions for Amy?
Thanks, Amy.
Brilliant. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done.
So you were talking so much about Canberra starting out here and how well the team's doing here. So how does it feel to have your final for this round of coaching?
Yeah, it's kind of strange because I came to Canberra in 1984 to play for Canberra City, and we used to play here when there was an actual track around the field. So this is kind of where I started playing in Canberra, and where I finished up with Canberra was with Canberra Cosmos as a coach at this stadium. So that's where I finished my last game in the national capital. So it's really quite nostalgic and really nice to be back here.
Relatedly, I think in your first stint with the Matildas, you played in Canberra in 1995, but at the AIS, with a handful of people watching, and 3 paragraphs in the Canberra Times. Today it's on the front page. You've got Sire Stadium.
Yeah.
You know, can you just speak to that growth that
It's bizarre. Somebody just asked me down there about what's the media people just asked me what's the thing that stood out to me during this time, and the thing that stood out to me is every time we've played a game at home, and I've walked out onto the field, into the coaching box, and just looked at the crowd. It's just been a phenomenal experience. I've never witnessed a crowd such as the Matildas crowd. You know, when I played in England or whatever, and you had sort of crowds that were, you know, very football related, it was still never an atmosphere like's been created now with the Matildas. It's just unique, and I kind of pinch myself when I go out and stand in front of it before the game starts and think, I can't believe that I'm actually still here. Well, I can't believe I'm still here, you know, like, hopefully for a few more years, but I just can't believe I'm back and had the privilege to be back in this environment.
Did you have much of a chat with Joe today?
Yeah, we had a brief chat, not for long, because it was sort of just in and out, introduced to the players. I know Joe quite well, and then we had a little chat before the game, and we'll probably catch up maybe at some time in the upcoming weeks when he's back full time in Australia.
Have you been offered another job with FA, like Chief Talent Scout, something like that?
I've been trying to get the assistant security job under Kirsten, but I don't think she's going to employ me. I've spoken to, we've had some chats, but there's been nothing sort of, no particular concrete role. So I think everybody will just wait to see what happens, you know, when things change and things start to happen again. And if there's something there, fantastic. If there's not, I'll be quite happy to sort of leave the building and relax.
So in the meantime, we call you ex-interim coach?
Yeah, that's me. That's my title. Yeah. It's a wee bit too cold down here.
To go back to the game for a moment, Amy said everyone had a fantastic performance. She said she wasn't expecting the call up last week. What made you feel that she was ready to come back into the national team setup, given she's only been playing for all of the
Look, she's always been on the radar. We always believe she's a player that's got international quality. Obviously, she'd been coming back for her ACL, but we've been monitoring her over the last probably couple of months, and she started to play some significant game time and started to play well in Sweden. So, and you know, we've got the other thing which helped is that we've had quite a few players missing from this camp due to injury. So when you put all those factors together, it was a fairly obvious call up for us, to be honest.
And then looking at your career as a whole, you've been so influential on Australian football. But when you reflect on yourself, what do you consider your legacy to be? Is it the formation of the W League? Is it the 2010 Asian Cup win? Is it everywhere you've been around the country? Or is it something that just can't be quantified because of how embedded in Australian football you actually are?
I don't know. It's a good question. It's not the Asian Cup win, because that's at the end of something. I know people tend to talk about those things. If I was to say what do I think my contributions were, I think the NTC programs, because they're the ones in that period in the 2006 to 12 and a bit further on produced the players, the Sam Kerrs and the Caitlin Fords. We had great coaches in place with a great system in place. You know, so that in place, I think that was one of the things, if I look back, that we created that I feel was really beneficial. And the second thing was the W League. I think the W League's been really instrumental in giving opportunities to domestic players that might not have had opportunities if we didn't have that league.
How does it feel, Tom, to be part of a record set at this ground for soccer, all-time record, and for a women's standalone event in Canberra?
No, it's fantastic, and particularly more so with my history in Canberra, it makes it feel even better. You know, the fact that we can come out on a cold Monday night and fill a stadium, it's just phenomenal, to be honest.
Tom, where do you think that next level will come from for the Matildas? Like, it's great they perform well at home, sell out crowds, you know, really got the nation behind them. What now when it comes to silverware and big tournaments?
Okay, I think there's a couple of things. I think one is, you know, when we've got a fully fit and healthy squad, I think the Matildas is still a very, very competitive team. And I think, you know, people forget we were this close to getting silverware at the last World Cup and the Olympics before the last one. So the team is close. The experienced players are still very influential and still very fit, and if they stay healthy, and we've got some good young players coming through, the squad is actually not in such a bad shape as I think some people perceive it is. So that's the first thing. But the second thing, and the real critical thing that we need to do, and you get me on the soapbox now again. I get into trouble with the last press conference that I got on my soapbox. This one's not so controversial. We need to put resources into development. You know, when I talked earlier about the NTC programs, basically about 10 years ago they collapsed, and you don't notice your development collapsing overnight. It takes time, and then all of a sudden we turn around and say we've got all these great players, but they're 30 plus now. What you need to do with the national team is you need to have a constant flow of players coming through, and we need to put more resources, more time and more effort into our talent identification and the developing of young players from, you know, the age of 15 onwards. That's what.
2 questions for Tom.
Tom, I'll just say, like, for this stint, this interim coaching stint, which has been very indefinite in some ways, you didn't know when it was going to end exactly. How would you summarise what your legacy just for this role has been? What are the things that you're most proud of?
I thought it was going to finish at Christmas, if I'm being honest.
Next
Christmas? I shouldn't have said last Christmas. No, I find it hard to answer those questions because you just, as a coach, you come in and you just sort of do your job. I think if what I felt was the Olympic campaign, last Olympic campaign, really hurt the team quite hard. There was great expectations amongst the team. Obviously, external expectations were great, and things didn't work out to plan. And to be honest, one goal could have put a different complexion on those Olympics. So I felt when I came into the squad, the confidence and the belief in the players collectively and individually was at a fairly low ebb. And I think what's happened in that time is that we've been able to sort of bring back a little bit more confidence in the squad, but also able to start to bring players who have been kind of on the outside of the squad into sort of believing that they feel part of the squad. You know, players like Amy that have come in. So, if anything, hopefully I've achieved that.
Final question.
Tom, I know you just talked about, you know, getting in trouble the last time you got on your soapbox, but, you know, the 25,000 crowd here tonight, they all cheered when Michelle Heyman came on the pitch.
Yeah.
And we've seen that around the country when, you know, players who play for, you know, an A-League women team in their market, they get the applause here. And I guess, I know it's impossible to fit 25,000 people into McKellar Park, but how do we get 25,000 people into McKellar Park when Michelle Heyman's right there?
Great question. A great question. We've got to utilise what we see here tonight, and it's a combination of things. I think I keep harping on about 3 things that needs to happen in women's sport. One is the media need to give it more coverage or better coverage. Sponsors need to come on board and realise that there is actually, when you see this tonight, there's a great market there that's untapped in women's football, and people need to come along to the games. They need, McKellar Park should be full. We need to see young girls, families, and people coming along and supporting the domestic players in the league. So those are the three things that need to happen. Canberra's got a really fantastic history in what was the WA League Women now, and it would be a travesty if they were no longer in the league. They're the best supported club. They've got a fantastic structure here. They've got a one-team town, or a one-town team. I'm never quite sure how to say that, and that should really be utilised, and people should come to the games. Now, I'm not an expert to say how do you get the people that are here tonight to games, but there's certainly got to be a way.
And for one final time, that concludes the post-match press conference with one Thomas D. Sermanni.
And can I just say, given I'm the oldest person here and probably the only one that's covered Tom in all 3 stints in the Matildas, I'd like to lead the media contingent in 3 cheers for Tom. Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray!
Thank you.
Thanks.